How's it going?
Hey, good morning or good afternoon to you on the East Coast.
Yeah,
Sorry, lost
yeah.
the screen there for a second.
Oh, all good. Yeah, good afternoon to all the East Coasters. Good morning to the West Coasters. All right. So, I'm sure others will jump in as we go along. But thank you guys for joining me today. Definitely want to do these on a more consistent basis. This is my first one after, quite a while. But you guys may not know because you weren't on the team then. But just wanted to bring these back to kind of give everybody, information on how we're running listings, what's working for us, the strategies we use in order to secure the listing. And, of course, there's going to be objections and stuff from the seller, kind of walk you through any objections that we get. In our career, we've always been kind of buyer heavy, more so than listing heavy, but I still feel like we've done a good amount of listings and pretty much know what we're doing without even having to look at anything. We don't have to look at scripts, we don't have to look at anything anymore. Really, the only thing we look at is comps, right? But basically how I want it to go today is, I'll be running through some basics. It might seem a little all over the place just because I have different points that I want to hit on different topic or different sort of topics within what I'm covering today. So if it does seem a little all over the place, I apologize. That's kind of, my whole thing for today. I kind of want it to be all over the place. But it still will be structured. That makes any kind of sense. But so basically how I want this to do is also can be interactive. So if you do have questions, just, unmute yourself, raise your hand. If you don't want to do that, you can always pop your question in the chat or, any type of contribution that you've had. Because I know a few of you have had listings on here before. So you guys can chime in too with your experience. We do have some interns joining us today that are not necessarily a part of the team. I don't want you guys to feel excluded. If you are an intern joining this, there may be items that you won't have available as part of the team necessarily, but those aren't necessarily items that you couldn't have outside of the team. And once you're starting up your real estate business, or, if you do decide to join our team, obviously you have access to those items, but I just wanted to give that kind of like precursor just in case that, you're like, well, wait, I don't have access to that. How am I going to use that? So I will primarily be going over team items, but that doesn't mean that these items and these strategies and this discussion won't be beneficial to you. This should be beneficial to everybody. So with that, let me go ahead and kind of get started here, just to respect everybody's time. So I've done a few of these in the past where we talk about, the intake form, and of course there can be role plays with that too. We can definitely do more of a role playing call in the future. However, I'm not prepared for that today. I like to be more prepared for these things. So I would like to kind of push that to a further date or leave those for the team meetings, because those are great on the team meetings as well, or we do a role play of somebody, calling for the initial intake and kind of walking through what that looks like, and how we walk through that with our sellers. So let's talk about it a little bit. Who knows what I'm talking about? Who knows what an initial intake form is? Okay.
Tasha, is that I cut out just a second on your end for me, but the intake form, is that in the context of a seller that sheet where you get all the information, that initial phone call, so that if you can take it and go onto our PR or the MLS to pull information on beds and baths and HOA, et cetera, all that stuff with regards to with the potential client at that point.
Right, yeah, that's exactly what I'm referring to. Yeah.
Okay.
And so we have a team seller intake form. So if you guys don't mind, I'm gonna go and pull that up real quick. Now, there's also an NAEA. So for those of you who've been through, you know, all of the training or the skill bridge training, you guys know what I'm talking about, the NAEA seller intake form. So you can use that one as well. That one is also great. We've also used it. So don't feel like, you know, that you have to use our form, but if you're using a form, make sure it's all encompassing, because you need to make sure that that is going to walk you through the items that you need to get walked through. So for those of you who don't know what it is, so whenever you're having an initial call with a seller client, this is the call you're usually having before you go and meet with that seller client, before you go to the listing appointment itself. This is just the initial intake form. It can take anywhere from 15 to 30 minutes on the phone with the seller, depending on how chatty they are and everything. But this is going to be something that you're going to get filled out. So give me 1 second. Because then I'm going to share my screen so that way you guys can see what I'm talking about. I don't have the NAE one handy, but I do really like that one too. All right, you guys should be able to see that now. And so this is kind of what it looks like. You're getting, you know, when you went to the home, you know, you're filling out all of this info, property address, seller names. If you know what the disc profile is, you can figure out like, oh, this is what I think that they are. You could do this near the end if you want to. You know, source, where they're coming from, bedrooms, baths, square feet, fireplace, whether it has an ADU, deck, pool. If it's in an HOA, you're going to want to get, you know, homeowners dues, you know, what their plan is. Are they staying there? Are they moving away? Are they moving out of state? You know, when they need to be out of the home by. So you're getting a lot of information on this form. But one of the most important things that you're going to get on this, you know, one of these forms that you're going to use, either the Gwilt Group seller intake or the NAE one, is you're going to want to get their interest rate and the loan balance that they still owe on their home. Now, you may run across people that are like, I don't know anything. That is kind of rare. Most people owe something on their mortgage. So you'll run into that, but you want to have, without a doubt, you want to have that information before you go to the listing appointment, because then you can kind of give more of an idea of like, okay, this is how much you're going to end up with in the end once you sell, minus fees, all of that. And we can go over the net sheet as well with the client. And so we can help you guys with figuring out what to do for that net sheet, because that's going to show them basically what they net at the end of the sale versus, you know, minus any fees, commissions, what have you, you know, repair costs from the buyer. So minus any of those sort of things, like that's what they can expect to net. And that's kind of where we focus when we're going in and talking to the sellers of where they need to be. And that's one of the most important things, right? Like, where do I need to be net, you know, net wise? Like, how much do I need to make in order to, like, say they're purchasing another house, like they need to know how much they're going to net. So the way they know if like, okay, if I need this like 100K from my next purchase, I can use that, right? And so gives them an idea of what to expect. And so that way they can make the best decision. And so that way you understand the timeline. So understanding where they need to go, why they need to go there. You know, why is actually super important. So the way you understand their motivation behind everything, and it kind of brings it down to more of a human level. And so you're trying to collect that information. Yeah, sometimes you'll do that at the listing appointment, but if you can get their motivation prior to that, get their timeline prior to that, so that way you can prepare a timeline before you meet with them. And we do have a spreadsheet for the timeline. Mark, I really love your background, by the way. But so that way you can prepare that timeline before you meet with them, because a lot of times sellers or owners don't understand what that timeline is whenever it comes to selling their property. So there's going to be a set sort of things that you guys will do before you head to that listing appointment. So the seller intake, this should be a non-negotiable when you are going forward on any seller. You need to make sure you have filled out this sheet before meeting with them. And then sometimes your initial discussion might end up being your full listing discussion and they're ready to list right there with you, which is great. But think of it, if you are going to go and meet them at the home, which is, you know, the normal process, you're going to have that discussion with them of like, hey, I just need 15 to 20 minutes of your time just to gather some info before our in-person meeting. And so just gathering some info with them on that. If they try to discuss commission with you before that, just say, you know, I would prefer if we wait until we meet, and so that way we can discuss what the commission would be. Because sometimes people do jump to the commission and be like, you know, I'm just in information gathering phase right now. When we discuss, I can, you know, show you the comps and tell you more about what your home would sell for. And then that will also go into what you're going to pay me on the commission. And of course, we have all the NAR settlement stuff that we can get to at a later date. But the seller intake, definitely have either this one or the NAA one. And so that way you can gather that information, know as well, you know, what their upgrades are on the home. Have they upgraded the home? Like, how long have they been in there? You know, did they make any upgrades to it, updates to it? What the current condition is. So that way, when you are pulling comps before you see the property, you have a good idea of what the condition of the home is. So that's what we do. We ask them that, like, you know, what upgrades, you know, in, you know, a pool, a yard, all of that is really going to feed into it. Now, beds, baths, square feet, for the most part, you usually get that off of realist tax or the tax records, whatever your tax records are within your MLS. Ours is realist, both in Florida and California. Some of you may have something different. But regardless, it should be in the tax records in the MLS. So I don't focus more on that. I focus more on what upgrades they've made, and what have you. Does anybody have any inputs as to what they like to get? Okay. But yeah, there's going to be a lot of questions on here. Just know you don't have to ask all of these questions. So, because it can be very overwhelming, right? And you're only on the phone for about 15 to 30 minutes. So you don't want to ask like every single question. But the things that I went over, those are your non-negotiables. So you're going to ask them their timeline. When do they need to be out of their home? You're going to ask them interest rate amount, loan amount. And you're going to need to ask them any upgrades, anything like that, to give you a better idea of what their timeline is and what the property would sell for. And then also, there was a question, sorry, something just popped in my head. Let me see if that question is on here. It may be. Yeah, so do you have an idea of what you think your home will sell for? This also will give you an idea of where they're wanting the home to be priced at. And especially if you talk to them about Zillow, right? You're gonna definitely know where this person is gonna want their home priced at. So then that gives you an idea of like, okay, I'm going to run comps on it. And it looks like, say this person wants to sell for 700. And you're looking at it and you're like, oh, I really don't know that it's gonna make it at that, it may sell for 650 at the best. So at least you know that once you do run the comps, so that way you can have that conversation with the seller when you meet with them. So that's going to give you like the key to knowing where they want to be priced at. And so of course, when you meet with them, you're going to talk them through the comps and why it should be priced lower, right? So it just gives you a better idea. And usually what somebody says for that is where they think a home should sell at. There has been times where they say, well, we'll just leave that up to you. Those are my favorites because they're like, I'll just leave it up to you what the price should be. So I was just like, okay, great. So that way it's a better conversation whenever you meet with them. But I wouldn't say that's everybody. Usually people have a number in mind. So anyways, go ahead.
Yeah, quick question for you. Just back to when you're asking them, like, for example, how many rooms, what if you discover discrepancies between what's in the MLS, what's online that you're checking, tax records or whatnot versus what they're telling you? And then when you go to run comps, are you running the comps off of what the actual room count is from what the seller is telling you, or would you be running it based on what's on the tax record?
I think I understood you. Sorry, you're a little bit muffled. So you asked if I'm running comps based upon the number of bedrooms, that they said, or if I'm going based upon what the realtor tax says.
Yeah, that's part of it. If there's discrepancies, how do you handle that with the seller? I don't know if I can get certain.
So I usually, that's a great question. So I usually go based upon what they tell me. Because I'm assuming they know the home better than what was recorded in real estate tax, because that's sometimes the case, right?
Right.
So that can happen, where there's a discrepancy, because then you're bringing that up like at the listing appointment. I wouldn't necessarily bring it up on that call, because then you're gonna get into a whole can of worms there. I'd rather bring it up in person. But yeah, sometimes that is the case where, it doesn't show the ADU. It doesn't show like the things that they're saying that it has. And so that's something that you can talk to them about, when you meet with them in person, because of course the real estate tax might say one thing and then they're telling you like, hey, I did this upgrade. But the problem is like, then when that was recorded, that was what was shown at the time. And so, yeah, there could be discrepancies there.
Got it. Oh, that's helpful.
Yeah. And so when you're listing the home too, you're going based upon what they're telling you. But if it comes to like square feet or something, there has to be something tangible there. So that way you can refer to it and what source that was, source you're referring to on the MLS, if that makes sense. But yeah, I usually just go based upon what they're telling me.
Okay.
Okay. So I know we're talking about like, we're not going to go over verbatim. That's kind of the highlights of what we do when we're doing that initial intake call. And then print this out and bring it with you, right? So that way you can refer to it if there's any other, discussions in person. And so, yeah, so definitely do that. Print that out, bring it with you. All right, so let me get back to my notes. So what we're going to move on to now is, you had that intake call, and now, you've set up that appointment to meet with them. Who knows what you should do next? Does anybody know what I'm going to say? Maybe not, because I'm being very vague.
I could take a guess and say, send them the seller high note.
Yes, perfect.
Yeah, okay, cool.
Yeah, good. Ethan has a cheat code because he's already done this.
Yeah, that's true.
But yes, So send them the seller high note. And so for those, some of you may remember, I recently released an updated version of our basically we don't call it a pre-listing packet. However, I did create a little bit of a cheat sheet for high note. So that way you guys know what which high notes are for what. And so I may need to go in and update this one. But I'm gonna share my screen again so that way you can see. I'm just gonna,
Tasha,
like-
where
go
can we
ahead.
find this stuff? Is this in the team resource center?
Yes, it is. Yeah,
Okay.
I think, or I'm sorry, it's not in the team resource center. It is on your onboarding checklist, right? So I think you may just not be to that point yet. But basically what you'll do is you'll send me your LastPass info and I'll share this login info with you. But make sure you refer to this high note creation SOP. So that way you're aware of what needs to happen there with those. Because basically you'll make a copy of everything for yourself. You'll put it in a folder. And so that's basically how that would work. So like for this one, you would make a copy of this for yourself. Now, Ethan, yours probably said something different because I did just recently update this. So not to confuse you or anybody else, but this is a new one, the Gwilt Group exclusive selling program. I went in and revamped this because it was kind of lacking some things. And so I'm always trying to improve these high notes, and apologies if anything is out of date. I try my best to keep these up to date. I just recently went in, so it should have the, the most up-to-date information, but it could have, information in there that's not up to date. So I add, about being a RealTor's top 1.5% producing team. I added in stuff in there to make it so that way if you guys did copy this, anybody can use it. So that way it's not just focused on one state or another. It's based on, all states. But my goal for you guys is that you go in here and you do add your info instead of this. Like this should be, you're putting like, Ethan, you would put your name, then, what have you. So you don't necessarily have to keep this information in there once you make a copy. Once you make a copy, like Joe, you can add your info in yours, so that way they have your contact info and everything in there. And so basically that's how that would work. But I did make it basic, so the way all you have to do if you want to is just go in there and add your name. And so I added, some info in there as far as the states and stuff. So you guys feel free to take out what you don't think will serve you. So this has a little information on why choose our team. Client testimonials, I actually added in the PDF that Cecilia created for us. Feel free to change this with a link to your own if you want. But the benefit to this, I guess, is that it's going to have everybody's reviews in there. So that way, if you don't have as many reviews yet, you at least can show a performance record for the whole team. Gave info on our exclusive home selling program. This is just a document telling them what all we do for them. Word of mouth advertising, lockbox and showing coordination, strong listing description. That's what that has in there. It's just a PDF. If they preview it, that's what's going to come up. So you can leave that in there if you want. You can take it out if you don't want it. I recommend just leaving it in there because I think it is going to bring some value to you. How do where's this now? I do have our Gwilt Group marketing plan in there. And so they can preview that and then it'll head over to that file as well. So the way they can see what our marketing plan looks like. Now, what I recommend that you do is you can have one created for yourself, But my recommendation is if there's anything in there that you're like, I absolutely will not ever do that for a listing, please take it out. So we're making a promise, right, to them that this is what we're gonna be doing. Now, I do like to tell them, like, there may be some items in there that are non-applicable to you. But if you're like, in my state, I am not allowed to do this, please take it out. If it doesn't serve you, please take it out of there. Or like ask Cecilia to take it out of there, of course, because she's helping create all of these. And you can brand it to yourself, because I know everybody on the team has like different branding, so you can make it your own branding. Sample luxury marketing plan. Now, this is something that I wanted to go over with you guys, because you may ask, like, okay, so what is this luxury marketing plan and how do I use this? At EXP, you can you can pay to be a part of their EXP luxury plan. And so basically that markets their listing. It actually doesn't matter what pricing the listing is at. EXP will do the marketing for it. You just have to submit it to the marketing platform. But at EXP, you do have to pay to be a part of EXP luxury. Now, for those that are licensed in California and Florida, you kind of have a cheat code, because I can be added to those to market it out on your behalf. So if you were not in those states, unfortunately, I don't think that that's going to apply for you, just based upon EXP's rules, right? And plus, I can't be added into an MLS in a state where I'm not, licensed in. But I think it's like $2,500. You can become a part of EXP luxury. Not a small amount of money, obviously. But there are a good amount of advantages there for you if you wanted to consider that. So if you guys are in a state where you're not, where we're not in and you're not paying for the EXP luxury, you'll definitely want to take out the sample luxury marketing plan, because we can't, per EXP guidelines, we can't offer that, right? But if you are, the cheat code is if you get a listing, you just add me in for the duration of the listing, take me off before it closes. And then I can submit it to the EXP luxury marketing department. And so that syndicates it out, and then I submit it to the platform, and then EXP marketing, luxury marketing department does like the international marketing of it. So that's an advantage for those of you who are either a part of EXP luxury or in California or Florida. So anyways, so that's why that's in there. That's something that I added. So that way you guys knew that that was something that was an option. So that gives more explanation. So that way, if your client's like, what's this EXP luxury, or what's this luxury marketing plan, you're not caught off guard.
Hey, Tasha, just,
Yeah.
sorry, one clarification for that. So with that, you're saying for California, we can co-brand it, or it's only you on
It's
the,
basically, it's almost like co-branding, yes. Because
So-
basically, if you get a listing, you would add me on as a co-listing agent in the MLS, and that's how I can still market it. I just
see.
have to be in the MLS, right?
Right.
And so that way you can market it there, because you can't do it by yourself.
Okay.
Not
And
my-
like, but
my
marketing
role,
material,
luxury rules.
yeah, marketing material wise, we could include both, for example, both of our
Yeah,
contact.
so if you're
info.
gonna, do the whole luxury thing,
Mhm.
just let me know, of course.
Mhm.
If you can add my info on there for co-listing agent, and then
Okay.
just mark like just contact listing agent, first listing agent for all inquiries.
Right. Okay.
And I always just defer them back to you anyways. But that's kind of like a cheat code that you could use. And so if you wanted to create, because there's like EXP luxury flyers, there's all of these things that if you add me onto, I can, basically have those things there for you.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep. So then on to the professional media package. This tells them what we do for them as part of our media package. Now, marketing packages usually comes out of our cost as agents. And so we've always paid for this out of pocket for the listing. Now, of course, within the team, it depends on where the listing client's coming from, yada, yada. David will be releasing the new team agreement, so that'll have more defining parameters in there as far as who pays for what and when. Of course, if it's our client that we're giving to you and you're either 20 or 35%, obviously we're paying for that. But I don't want to get off on that tangent, but that'll be for you guys to read within that new team agreement that David's going to be releasing, to clarify that. And so, we do a whole media package. Zillow has a 3D virtual tour. We do Matterport, which is basically an actual walkthrough of the entire property. So there are some agents, and I don't want to sound condescending, but at the same time, I have to say, you know, it is what it is. There are some agents that call it a walkthrough, a virtual walkthrough, and it's a slideshow of pictures, guys. Like, that's not a virtual walkthrough of a property. That's just a slideshow. Now, if we were early 2000s, it was probably the best technology that you can get. But luckily, we're in 2024, where we have a whole lot more things available to us at our disposal, right? So a virtual walkthrough is a Matterport where you basically click in the room and you can spin all around. You can walk over here, you can walk over there. Yeah, you can only walk to the little circles that the photographer places on there. But this is a virtual walkthrough of it. It's not a, like, we're going to have video of pictures that go scroll by. And I like to say we don't do that as a team. That's not proper advertisement for a property. Now, I know some people have restrictions. I think, Ethan, you had some sort of restriction there, right? If I recall correctly, there was some restriction in Colorado for virtual tours.
The only issue we actually ran into was just the video. So like my photographer made a video of the property, and
Yeah.
that there was some reason it wouldn't go on the virtual tour. It either had to be the Matterport or this one just wouldn't populate. And so the issue is we couldn't put it in like the comments of the listing for people to see.
Okay, that's what it was then. I remember there was something to that effect.
Yeah.
So you'd be like, yeah, we have to use the stupid virtual tour.
Yeah.
But yeah, when you say virtual tour, this isn't early 2000s, right? We're using an actual Matterport walkthrough. And this should be a standard whenever it comes to listings that you guys are taking. Like, yeah, you know, there are some listings that don't pay, you know, a whole bunch of money, but let's just be real. There's some listings where we're making a good amount of money. Like, we need to not cheap out on our clients that are trusting us to get their property sold. And I know that, so we were helping Nick with his property. Do you guys realize, like, on $1 million+ properties, he was telling us that these other agents aren't using Matterport on these listings in Redondo Beach? And that's like a pristine place to be. If you guys don't know, Redondo Beach area. Like, it's a very desired place to be because schools are highly rated. It's a great area, great location and everything. And I was dumbfounded when he told me, like, you know, most of these other listing agents over here aren't using Matterport. I was like, well, you know what? We're not going to be most other agents. We're going to use Matterport because that's what we do, right? And so basically my guidance to him was like, okay, if the first week you don't get showings, go ahead and get the Matterport. But if for the first week you don't see showings, like, add the Matterport in. But our standard is that there's a Matterport added in. Now, it was on his own sale, right? So we're not, like, you know, gonna make him do something, but it isn't an option for him. But that is our standard, is that we have a Matterport done on every property. We have a Zillow 3D tour on every property. And so some properties we have virtual, not virtual, like a property video, if you guys know what those are, where it's a video, like, it's not the slideshow that I was joking about, but it just shows pictures of the property, and then it may show like the area, there's like drone shots, and then it may show like parks and schools and beaches and stuff like that. So sometimes we'll do a video, you know, one of those property videos and add it in there as well. And then we will have our photographer take drone photos. Now, usually for this cost, it's like, I believe it's like $1,000 or so. I don't remember how much it is, but it's definitely worth it because we don't want to cheap out whenever it comes to marketing the property because that's our job as agents. And so it's really important to have these things done whenever you are marketing a property. Now, I would say the property video isn't necessary on every single property. You use that to your just use your best judgment when it comes to that. But I would say Matterport should be a non-negotiable and drone photos should be a non-negotiable unless you're in an area where you're like, I don't want them to see, you know, maybe the neighbor has like trash in their yard or something like that. Then of course you can use strategies where you try to highlight the house instead of the other properties around it. But for the most part, we use drone. A lot of people are using drone. And so that's what the media package looks like. And of course you can see a little bit of a before and after of some properties that we've done. Now, what we want to do is do more of these because we obviously have more than 2 homes that we've done this on, where you see the difference of, you know, what a home looked like before and what it looked like after. Like, guys, some people use this left photo as their marketing photo. Now, you would probably say, you know, it's not that bad. But you would also say, obviously, somebody took this on their cell phone. The agent cheaped out. They didn't pay for a professional media package. On the right is the professional photographer. Like, it's obviously a big difference there. And it's also staging. And this home is staged. So we not only gave guidance, but we also had a stager in and we had a photographer in. And so that's the difference between those. And of course, this as well. Like, this was before they had the stager there, before they had the photographer there. Like, drastic difference. And that's going to be a drastic difference too for your seller clients. Like, would you rather market your property with this or would you like that? Most people are going to say, I want the one on the right. And that can also be part of your listing presentation, right? Okay, so tell me which photo, which you would like to go with. Do you want me to market your property like this or like this? And of course, that can also feed into commission discussions too, right? This is the type of marketing that I do. Or do you want to go with other realtors? Like, maybe they'll use this photo instead. I mean, this is still our photo, but we don't use that to market. So, any questions on that?
I actually have a quick question, Thomas. This is without getting like too in the weeds here, but if you encountered a seller who was like, you know, the normal Gwilt Group commission 6%. So if they were saying, well, I want less, I want 5 or 5.5, and you were negotiating with the seller, would you at any point, I don't necessarily say would use the iPhone photos, but would you not do if the seller wanted a lower commission to pay lower commission, would you not get the Matterport or not do the virtual tour, etc.? You just get a cheaper, for lack of a better term, marketing package?
No, I would probably at the bare minimum still do professional photos and Matterport because that's my baseline.
Okay.
That's they're paying me, and yeah, they're paying me a reduced commission, but they're paying me to market their property, and it's to my benefit as well that the home has proper marketing media done on it.
I think to that too, wouldn't it also benefit your future marketing as well? I mean, you're showing quality as well and keeping that quality up. I mean, that would be I feel like it's worth the investment, just to make sure that you're having a good, strong social media presence and leveraging that for future
Right.
marketing, not just that one property.
Right. And then like what happens if, you know, Lord forbid the seller needs to cancel and now you're out of money for this. And that's also why we've discussed having some sort of cancellation fee in there, at least $1,000, not something ridiculous, not like $6,000 or something. But more so like at least $1,000 to cover, you know, the marketing costs for their house, because we're obviously paying for all of this even before it's on the market, right? And so, we're doing all this before we get paid. So that would be something that, you can do is at least $1,000 cancellation fee, and you can explain that to them as you're going through the listing agreement. You'd be like, you know, I'm gonna pay for marketing before your home even comes to market. And so if for whatever reason you have to cancel, you would just have to pay that $1,000 cancellation fee.
Hmm.
And you don't have to get approval from us on that, like, that's fine. Cause that's actually what we wanna do, because, you know, we've had instances where the seller wants to cancel, and sometimes to no fault of theirs, right? Like their plans change drastically or something happens. But the thing is that then we're, like, even though we can still market it, it's still money out of our pockets. Like, who wants to pay $1,000 or something for, like, who even wants to pay $500 for something and then not get paid in the end? So. All right, good to move on. I know it's kind of going in depth as far as these things, but I think it's important that you guys know these things about the listing, or the pre-listing packet. So that way you understand what to walk your clients through and why you do what you do, why they're paying what they're paying you. And especially with all the NAR changes, we're going to do more and more of these sort of things to really show our value, and not to get off on a side tangent, but we are, I just sent Cecilia, I think it was today. Oh gosh, just like the days run together sometimes. But we are having her work on a listing guide, kind of like what we came out with, a buyer guide. We're having her create one of those too, so that way you guys can give that out. If the seller signs the agreement with you, that's something to leave with them at the end. I don't recommend, since it is like the goal there is once you have a signed agreement, you're giving them like a spiral bound buyer, or I'm sorry, not buyers. My head's stuck there because we just came out with it. The listing guide to give to them so that way they understand the process. And then it also just makes you look super professional. Like, here's this spiral bound, you know, book that you can give to them. And that's is kind of like your first gift to give to them for using you. Like, that's the gift that you give to them, and you're not giving it to everybody because that could be costly, especially if you're having, you know, numerous listing appointments. That could be, because I think it's like, it depends on who, you know, what service you use, but on Canva, it's like $10.50 a pop, plus of course shipping and handling. So it's not going to be like a cheap thing to do, but I think it's going to be something that sets us apart, especially in the changing environment that we're in.
Hey, Tasha, question on that when it does come out, like similar, you had that checklist, which I found very helpful to kind of show, you know, what services are covered under buyer representation,
yeah.
and similar with the seller. I guess back to Ethan's question earlier about like if they reduce the commission, is there a way maybe on that checklist then there's a way to show, okay, here are areas that we might limit our services, or some way to kind of use that as a tool?
Like, kind of like what Cecilia put out for like what you get with working with a listing agent versus me as your buyer's agent. We're gonna come up with something like that with like, okay, you want this kind of fee, this is the kind of service. Like, maybe we don't do all of the things that we're saying because of that. And like, okay, if you're willing to pay us, like, what if somebody's willing to pay you 7%? Like, I'll include staging for that, right? You can include other things for that. So, but yeah, we'll definitely be doing that and having, you know, that added. If you do see, because we are always working on about 1 million different things, and you don't see that added, just remind me if you would. Because sometimes there's like 1 million things that we're working on, and sometimes those sort of things escape my memory. Okay, so I know we have 15 minutes left. I can go over this. So staging is one of those seller related costs, right? This is gonna be something that we have always asked for sellers to pay for. Your standard is just gonna be whatever you decide that you want to do. Do you wanna cover that, or do you want the client to cover that? The problem is that you don't know what kind of check you're signing up for, right? It can be, like, staging is expensive. It can be 5K plus, for staging. So it's not cheap. And when you're discussing staging with your client, staging is gonna happen whether they hire a professional or not, right? So they're gonna do some sort of staging, whether it's self-staging or hiring a stager. Because sometimes when we get to staging, clients are like, I don't want to do staging. I'm like, no. Like, we're not talking about just professional staging. You're gonna have to, like, stage your home, whether you hire a professional stager to do it or not. And I also recommend finding companies in your area. We have one for California. We have a company in Florida too. But I haven't had any listings here yet for that, at least in Tampa. But maybe find a company that will do a staging consult fee. And then you can also, because what we talked about doing before with some clients, if they're like, well, I don't want to pay for that fee, I don't want to pay for that fee. Like, well, if you pay for it, I'll reimburse you at closing. So that way they will do it. Because what I noticed is, like, some people aren't hiring them, and then they're not getting the results that they need for the staging. And then that's where we come in and be like, oh, no, let's do this, let's do that. But I don't want to become the stager. I've done it before, though I love home decorating. I'm a realtor, right? I'm selling your house. I'm not staging your house. You see photos on social media of people going to pick up plants and pictures and whatever, like, oh, hi, I have this in my car. I'm like, that just shows you that you're not willing to talk with your clients about hiring a professional stager. Like, that's you saying, like, I'm just gonna do this myself, and kind of do your client a disservice. That's like you going in and be like, well, I bought this really professional camera on Amazon, and now I'm gonna go take all your professional photos. Now, some of you may be a professional photographer, and I've had a mentee before that he was a professional photographer. But I would just ask yourself, if you're not a professional photographer, not a professional stager, as long as we can, well, what am I trying to say? We need to hire professionals. They're hiring you as a realist, not a photographer. They're hiring you as a real estate professional, not a stager. So that these things need to be hired out. There may be some people that want to do it themselves. In that case, be sure if they're refusing to have somebody come in and do a consultation, even if you're offering reimbursement at the end, do this. Show them, if you don't have it, of course, this is something that we'll try to put out to you guys. Of course, we have some photos here, but try to show them photos of what they need the property to look like at the end. Because some people have no idea. We even have somebody that was like, well, they had a red, I don't know if JR's on here, he'll know who I'm talking about. But we have this red wall, do I need to paint this red wall? Really don't want to paint this red wall. But really guiding your clients on things that are just going to be a drastic change. Like, do we want to turn away buyers? Or do we want to bring buyers in, right? And neutral paint colors are the best thing to do. Now, there are some colors that if in that area, like, this isn't going to be a turn off to anybody, then maybe you can leave it. Like, some of the bathrooms were like a pastel green color and stuff like that. And like, if you're in like California, like, no, I don't want those sort of things. But I would just use your best discretion. Dan, did you have a question?
No, I was just going to add on to that because the listing, I'm actually just leaving the client's house now. We're going live tomorrow. So when I did the initial consultation, did a walkthrough of the house, the two most alarming things were the walls, because there was a lot of cords and nail holes and just dirty handprints, and the carpet. They had a cat that, it scratched up parts of it, and you could just tell it was the carpet that was in the house when it was first built. So I told him, I said, look, we could either your top end list price is this number, but with everything I'm seeing right now, we're never going to get that. So we're going to need to list lower unless you guys, decide to fix this stuff up. And I just went over, they had the carpet replaced, they painted all the walls a neutral color. They had somebody come in and clean the tile and clean the grout and seal the floor. So the thing looks spotless now. So photos are tonight and I'm excited to get it up on there. So definitely having those conversations and at least articulating to them like, hey, look, we could either sell it for top dollar or are people going to see a project when they come in on an open house. So I'd much rather them see it as a diamond, not a diamond in the rough.
Right, and that's a great discussion. I'm glad you brought that up because then that does lead into like, okay, you want top dollar, but you're saying that you're not willing to replace carpet that needs to get replaced. So then you can expect to not get top dollar then. You want to, you're good with settling for less. And then most people are like, no, I really want top dollar. And we're like, well, these are the things that I recommend that you do because you want top dollar.
And just for anybody, if they run into the same thing, and we did a couple of quotes like with other companies, they ended up going to Lowe's. They were able to finance it at a really good monthly payment. And that way, when they pay the house off and, walk away with whatever their net is, they'll be able to pay that off. And it wasn't anything crazy just because you went to a big box store. So might help having that information on the front end just to provide that value to your clients that you're on top of it.
I like that idea, Dan. But yeah, those are all great points, great ideas. Because then that definitely helps that discussion. All right. Any more questions or additions to staging? Okay, so we will move on. Now, you guys can also, I don't think we've done this in the past, and I'm not really sure why. This could be something that could go into your net sheet. Actually, I do think I know why, because staging varies in cost. So like if you only put 5K on your net sheet and it ends up being 10 grand, then they're gonna be like, wait, you told me that it was 5K and now it's 10 grand. I think that's why, because we've never actually had, because it's gonna vary based upon how much staging that they need. Because our California stagers will do an initial consult. That's like $300. They can do partial staging, or they can do stage to live, which means that they're paying somebody to tell them like, go buy this sort of picture, go buy a plant, put it here, go buy this, do this. And then they come at the end and show them where to place everything, make sure everything's good before pictures. Or they'll do, the partial stage where it's like, okay, you're living in the home, but you need some additional items to make the home really pop. Or they do like full on all of the furniture, right? So that's why there's like all different like options when it comes to staging. So that's why we've never done that. You'll notice that the net sheet marketing timeline offer comparison, it's a hidden asset. You can have that on yours if you want to. I hid it because I wasn't necessarily, I don't even know why I have this hidden, but you can not hide it if you like that, because then the seller is going to see that whenever you send it to them. So if you won't have that prepared prior to that, just hide that from them so the way they're not seeing that. So just make sure to not have anything on there that they're going to see if it's not done. How about our cash offer program? So if you guys haven't heard of express offers, that's basically what that is. Let me show it. I don't know why I have this hidden either. But this is just express offers for somebody that needs to sell quickly. They're usually not gonna get full market price, right? Because it's investors, because they need to make what they need to make on the flip. And so it's not necessarily going to be a full price offer, but this is good for somebody that doesn't want to bring it on market, that wants to just do an off market sale. We were talking about this yesterday, Mark. But yeah, express offers is a great option. And knowing those options too, whenever it comes to the listing, knowing what EXP programs are offered is really gonna help set you apart when you're at the listing appointments or having those initial discussions. Knowing about EXP Express offers, Curbio is one where they'll come in and make any kind of repairs. It doesn't even have to be a full remodel. It can be a few repairs around the home. And Curbio will come in for that. The only thing I would caution is just the permitting process is absolute craziness. It can take months and months and months and months for permitting, especially in California. I don't know how bad it is in other states, but it's absolutely horrible there. So that's the only thing I would caution against there. But that is an option if they're aware and they're like, yeah, that sounds good, because not everybody has the money out of pocket to do those sort of things. So Curbio, Express Offers, EXP Luxury, we already went over. What's one? What am I missing? Oh, EXP Exclusives. That's the off market. For off where you put off market listings in EXP. So if you have a client that doesn't want to bring their property to the MLS, that could be an option for them. So, and I think that's where I'm going to wrap up. If we have any final questions, we can, discuss those, but listing is one of those things where I could probably do 3 or 4 of these and still not cover everything because there's a lot to know. But if you guys have any additional questions, we can either cover them here, or if you think of anything after the call, of course, you can always just pop it. Or actually you could just send me a message, because then I can answer it for a following one. But oh, actually, I forgot one thing. Virtual staging is also an option. It's not as good option as actual staging. Sometimes if the budget really isn't there, that could be a good option as well. We've done that on, a few of our listings. I'm boring Conrad over there. Just joking. Anybody have any final thoughts, questions, anything? Was this helpful to make you guys feel a little bit more prepared whenever it comes to listings?
Yeah, Tasha, it's definitely helpful and more than I've seen from any mentor, the first mentor that I was assigned to. So thank you. Hey, you had a bullet in there that says, why do we do 25K pricing? What's that about?
So that's what's called our strat pricing, and I'll be happy to cover that at the next call. Because there's a certain
Perfect.
pricing that we do on all listings. You know how some people do 699,999. We don't price like that. We price in 25K increments, because they're, buyers aren't coming to their agent like, can you stop it at 699,999? It's usually in 25K increments. And we actually go over that with every seller client that we have, because they're like, well, why don't we do this? We're like, it sounds great when it comes to like retail. Retail is great. You don't feel like you're paying $10, even though it's $9.99. But when it comes to pricing, and I'll probably try to have David be on, because he can explain it way better than I can. But I'll see if he'll jump in for a little bit on some of the things that he's better on with explaining for next time. And strat pricing is definitely one of those things that he's good at explaining. So maybe I'll have him jump on that and the net sheet item, because we did jump in on somebody that had a listing, and we did several net sheets for them. And I am so blanking. Apologize if they're on the call. I am forgetting who that was. But that's something that we're gonna do to set us apart as a team, and provide like what our net sheets look like versus what you can net with other realtors. So, but yeah, as you guys can see in my notes, like there's more to go over. Any other questions? Comments? Ethan, was there anything that stood out to you?
I mean, it could lead into a longer conversation, but the only thing was, because I know for my listing, they didn't want to stage. I'd recommended at least getting oh gosh, what's the name? Interior decorator, at least somebody to come out and do a consultation just to
Mhm.
see what they can do, because they had all their furniture there and they weren't packing it up yet. And so I'd
Oh.
recommended, hey, here's a few in our Gwilt Group vendor list. Here's a few in the Colorado Springs area that I recommend at least coming out to give their 2 cents.
Yeah.
So I guess the only thing that stood out, and it's a question, which doesn't have to necessarily be a whole tangent, but is how do you effectively relay that information to them that this is beneficial? If it's staging versus virtual staging versus no staging, having that conversation to get the seller to understand, hey, even this initial investment might actually net me more money down the road.
Yeah, and that's something to talk to your stager about as well. Our stager knows how much over asking he gets for the listings that he stages. So you can always talk to your stager beforehand and be like, do you know what your numbers are? Cause like they monitor the listings that they stage and like, okay, this one went 30K above, this one went 50K above. So our stager, and it's my bad because I don't remember the numbers that you told me, but it was something like the seller's net like 70% more or something like that whenever they stage versus not. And so getting your stager to, you can even ask them to have a conversation with them.
Yeah.
Be like, hey, I'm trying to get these people as clients. Would you mind having a call with them to, discuss staging, and how much that could, and then of course you can always have it, excuse me. You can always have it in your listing packet if you just want to talk to your stager and get those numbers beforehand.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, just trying to find the middle ground of course not leaving it out, but also not coming on super strong. I could be overthinking it, but not coming on too strong of like, once the listing agreement is signed, it's like, okay, you need to do, or even before that, you need to do this, and overwhelm them with, where they're thinking, oh, I have to spend all of this money or I have to do all these things, and now I'm overwhelmed. And whether or not a client shuts down and says,
Yeah.
I'll do this and this, but I won't do this and this.
Right. Yeah, and I think it's really just talking them through their options. Like if they know all of the data, right? If you're like, hey, I know that's gonna cost you, say like 10K. It's gonna cost you like 10K to stage. That's a big gut punch to anybody. 10K is not a small amount of money. But if you're like, what if you could take that 10K and put 20K in your pocket in it? Like, how would that sound to you?
Right.
Because if you stage, that's what our stager is saying that they could do for you. And that's what they've seen time and time again with their staging, is that if you spend this much on staging, this is how much more your home is going to sell for. And it's so true, because like if people are walking into a vacant house, there's no furniture there, and they're like, where do I put my couch? Where do I put my furniture? I don't understand. And I had a very good example of this with a listing that it was kind of, I'll save the whole long story, but we told them like, hey, you need to stage, and they decided not to, and then it was completely vacant. And then about a month or so into it, they're like, the property wasn't moving, and they're like, I'm gonna stage. Well, I'm not saying that it was quick, but it was quicker than what we waited beforehand. So they should have staged all along, but they were deciding not to use them, to spend the money. So using examples like that, even if it's not your example to use, and just kind of putting people through that same scenario, of what happened with somebody else who decided not to stage, and then how long their property stayed on the market, and then they stage, and then it sells not too long after that. Because staging makes a huge difference. People, I feel like sometimes we like to give people more credit, but it's hard sometimes for buyers to imagine where the furniture is gonna go. How is my bed gonna fit here? How is my couch gonna fit in the living room? Whereas if there's furniture already there, they're like, oh, And that's exactly what happened. What I saw with this property is that I held every open house and I held a lot of them. And people were coming through and that's what I would hear. Where does this couch go? Where does this go? Where does that go? And then as soon as we staged, poof, questions were gone. Done. So it works. And the staging isn't something that we were just like, oh yeah, go ahead and stage a property. It's for a reason. It's because it's gonna net them more in the sale in the end. Because buyers need to envision where these things can go and they just can't do it on their own. I'm not saying all buyers, but just, and there's nothing wrong with them. It's just what happens, right? Like, how is my couch gonna fit here? How is the TV gonna fit here? How's this gonna fit here? But as soon as you put furniture in there, people are like, oh, okay, I can envision the space now. I know where things can go.
Yeah, and I like how you said it, because my reaction to that is phrasing it in a way to the clients of like, well, we could not stage, but here's usually what we see happen with properties that don't stage versus what happens when we do stage. So it's like you can take, it's not directly word for word, this is how you phrase it, but you can take that chance, but there's a gamble, there's a risk that by not staging it could have this result. And that, at least in my mind, kind of has that, it's not intentionally creating a fear response, but there's that, ooh, I want to sell my house. I want to do the best I
Yeah.
can to
And
get
we're
my
doing
property
it for them
sold.
good, right? We're
Right.
not trying to fear them. We're trying
Exactly.
to, this is real issues that's gonna happen if you decide, like, these are real, like, what the consequences of their decision. Like, this is really what's gonna happen. Do you want your home to sit on the market longer? And kind of like what Dan was mentioning about the carpet and stuff. It's like, okay, could sit on longer for that.
Right.
Or do you want it to sell, tomorrow? Like, okay, then let's go ahead and make all of the repairs. And that's always the discussion that we have with them. Like, in the end, of course, it's their decision. Like, okay, I'm not going to do this. But then I remind them of the decision consequences that that's going to entail. Like, okay, if you want something where we got to price it right and we need to, do all the repairs that needs to be done before we bring it to market. And I think carpet is like one of those like things that, if you don't have fresh carpet, that could be something to deter somebody. And they're like, all they see is dollar signs. And then they're like, well, I don't want to move into this property because then I have to replace the carpet first. So carpet is kind of one of those things that's it's kind of like a red wall. A red wall is never a good thing, because it's so controversial. So, but yeah, it is having those conversations of like, okay, if we price here, so say they're wanting to price higher, like that, they could still get it, but they're like, well, I need to move by tomorrow. You're like, but the pricing strategy you just told me that you wanted to do isn't going to get you there tomorrow. It's going to get you there 2 months from now or 3 months from now. Are you willing to wait? And those conversations we've had with our clients before, because they're like, I don't want to drop the price, or this is where I want it to be. We're like, okay, we're pricing it so that way it's going to take a little bit longer for that listing to sell versus not. So that's why we have those, listing discussion. We can dive into more of those type of conversations, but I love those type of conversations too, with like knowing how to phrase things when you're talking to the seller of like, okay, if you, based upon your decision, because you're giving them all their options, right? You can not stage, you can stage, you can do virtual staging, you can stage it yourself. And if at the end they're like, yeah, I'm just gonna stage it myself, they're like, okay, if you're gonna stage it yourself, then this is what needs to happen. You said you wanted to get top dollar. So this is where the property needs to be. We can't have animals running around. We can't have your family and baby photos. Like, they're so cute, but we can't have those on the walls because the buyers can't picture themselves there. We can't have these things in order to get the listing sold for the timeline that you wanted, for the amount of money that you wanted. In order to do that, this is what we need to do. If you don't, and of course we won't say it this way, we won't say it this harsh, but like, if that's not what you want to do, then these are the consequences of that happening. So. My throat's getting dry because I've been talking forever, but it was great questions. Anybody have anything else before I wrap up? I know I'm going a little bit over, but it also helps me gauge how long these meetings should be.
Just want to say super helpful, Tasha. Thank you.
Good. And I try to make it sort of structured, but sort of not structured, because too structured, then it gets boring. So. Stephen, Joe, Dan, Andrea, any of you have anything? All good?
All good.
I do
just
have a
occurred to me-
question.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
And I just want to say
Perfect.
first, anybody that needs to jump off, feel free.
Steve,
Go
go
ahead.
ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, I think Mark should put some glasses on and juxtapose himself with Kyle Whistle, because I was trying to figure out, why does he look so familiar? And that's why. I think you look like Kyle.
He looks like Kyle.
So the condo I have for sale under contract, I had that Federal Pacific panel. I just spoke to the agent. He's agreed, or he spoke to his client and they're agreeing to replace it now. So
Okay.
today is the last day of the inspection period. So obviously I want to get that on paper. Do I need to do it under the, like, we're waiving the amount of time left on the inspection, even though the end's tomorrow, and then just putting in there, we accept it as is. And then seller agrees to replace electrical panel prior to closing, and just, leave it at that update panel?
Yeah. Yeah, that's
Okay.
what
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, that's all I got. Thank you.
Okay, yep, you're welcome. Anybody else have anything? All right. All right, I'm just gonna close it out for today. Thank you guys for being here, and I will announce when the next one will be. I believe we'll do one it'll either be 12th is gonna be hard because I think that's the day we get back into town, but I will let you guys know for sure. I'll just do an announcement on Slack, so that way you guys can plan it out. I think we'll just go ahead and continue listing discussions since we didn't cover everything today. But my plan is to do different topics. So even if we don't cover everything next time on the listing one, you guys let me know what format you want. Do we want to do listings until we're dead in the face and we know all about listings? Or like, how do you guys want to see it structured?
I'm good with listings. Yeah, I mean, I feel like buyer consultations they're not as, like, if you're working with a first time home buyer, you can kind of goof off, not goof off, but like mess up and goof up and still have, like, not know all the answers, but be able to feel kind of some of those general questions. And then, basically it's a lot of hand holding with the listing stuff. Like, at least for me, being a newer agent, I want to be on it where it's like, I've got that down to a science, so. But obviously I'm speaking selfishly, so I mean, whatever else the other teammates want, is the consensus.
Okay, thank you. Mark, did you have something?
Nope, just push the wrong button.
Oh, okay, I was wondering, you look like you were gonna say something. I think that would make the most sense is do listings. Listings until we're done with listings. And then move on. So we'll probably do 3 or 4 sessions of discussing listings and, potentially do a role play of some of these items. But I kind of want to, discuss all of the basics of everything and then go into role play, if that makes sense. And so I think that would be the structure of it. But appreciate you guys giving feedback as far as that goes. So the way I know the best way to plan these out. And then if anybody has any inputs as far as frequency, I was planning to do it bi-weekly, but if you think weekly would be better to get through things a lot faster when it's fresher on your brain, like I can definitely do that as well.
Either one's good. I do have a question. If we're gonna be out of town for, say, a couple weeks, obviously we have listings on the market. But it may be, at certain times, we can't answer the phone or whatever. What is the best way? Like, should I just have you as the co-agent on the listing for that? That way, at least they can
Yeah.
defer to you. And I'll just let you know, like, hey, just keep an eye on it because I'm going to be gone for X amount of time.
Right.
Okay.
When are you gone?
I'll send you all the dates, but it's going to be end of June into like the first week and a half into July, like almost 12, 13 days.
Okay.
We just have a lot of family trips planned this year during that time. Yeah. And we'll be in like Tennessee where you lose, phone connection. So I definitely don't want like somebody to be calling, asking a question.
Yeah. Yep. We can get you covered.
Okay.
No problem.
All right. Thank you.
Okay. You're welcome. All right, guys. So I'm just going to go ahead and end it here. Thank you guys for coming, and I'll see you next time. Bye.